Always glad to welcome Ann Coulter, syndicated columnist, best-selling author of In Trump We Trust, E Pluribus Awesome, and more recently, Resistance is Futile, How the Trump-Hating Left Lost Its Collective Mind. And I don't think the election has stopped them from losing their minds. And I'm wrestling tonight with whether or not to feel envious or grateful that you and Sean and Tucker Carlson have all been doxxed by Antifa, and I was left off the list, or whether that's a good thing.
An insult, yeah. It's like, I know. I suspected that that guy, what's his name, Steyer, the one in California. I think
Tom Steyer.
Tom Steyer sending those fake bombs to himself. And definitely Robert De Niro needed a little publicity for his restaurant. No, I mean, they put on a brave face, so they couldn't really control how sad they were on MSNBC and CNN on election night. But apparently their base doesn't think that it was a successful election night, since, they are out in force harassing random conservatives.
Well, and in fact, this kind of tactic, and I'm proud that over the years I've had people say, well, those people are pro-life or pro-abortion. You ought to put out their phone number, their home address. I said, I will never do that, never ever. It is not a legitimate tactic in America. But now it's being used against you and Hannity and Carlson and all, and the mainstream press is not setting up the kind of uproar that they would normally reserve for somebody leafleting Bill de Blasio or something like that.
Oh, no, this has been going on against me for 20 years, which is why I move every 2 years and have put in place many other protective mechanisms. And you are absolutely 100% right. They think it's cute. It's funny to put out the private addresses of right-wing public figures, knowing that there are many crazy people on their side. I mean, there are many crazy people generally, and that you're increasing the odds of someone showing up and committing violence against one of us. No conservative would ever do this. It's one of the most appalling things, and the respectable liberals like Keith Olbermann, who was constantly discussing where I lived, for the sole and exclusive purpose of inciting a crazy person.
Well, and Ann, you wrote this most recent column about the idea that they, being the liberal left, has spent the last 2 years going crazy, and it hasn't produced much of anything in real results. You remind people, as I was reminding the other night, Obama lost 63 House seats in his first midterm and 6 Senate seats. Clinton lost 54 and 8. And here's Trump, loses 28 in the House and gains a few in the Senate side. I can see why they're unhappy, but they haven't changed their tactics.
No, I don't think they're going to, which, I mean, I didn't want to. Perhaps I hinted at it on your show, but I was really expecting it to be much worse, not only because Democrats are the party out of power, and historically that party picks up a lot of seats in the midterms. There are enough sort of stupid independent voters who think, I want divided governments. I'll vote for the other party this time. There are enough who do that, but on top of that, a lot of Republicans in the House and to some extent a few in the Senate were spooked by the media into believing there was going to be a huge blue tsunami. Get out while the getting's good. You got to get yourself a good lobbyist job. So there are about 50 retirements from Republicans. Well, incumbents tend to win their reelections about 90% of the time. So to have 50 Republicans retiring and leaving us with open seats, I thought it was going to be much, much worse. There is also, of course, never forget, the demographic changes that Democrats have been putting on this country for 50 years now. We did see that with so many close elections. If Trump doesn't keep his promises on immigration by building a wall and deporting illegals, as I have told him, run the exact same election, him against Hillary, everything is exactly the same. In 4 years, he loses. Why? Because every day about 50,000 immigrants turn 18 and start dying, and an equal number of traditional legacy Americans are dying off. not an equal number, but a number, year after year after year. Demographics is destiny, and we're on the cusp of losing Texas and Florida. Well, then it's over. Then Kavanaugh doesn't matter. We will never have another Republican president. Democrats will pack the court. The country's finished when that happens. And boy, are we on the edge of it now. I thought it was over the night Romney lost. Who knew that someone like Donald Trump would come along? But then he got into office and appears to believe that the extent of his powers as commander-in-chief are to tweet. He hasn't done any of this, and I'm obviously a little annoyed with the president.
I know
for firing the one guy in his cabinet who actually was keeping his promises on immigration, Jeff Sessions. The names that are being floated to replace him are unmitigated disasters. All of them open borders types. It's not going to get done. And as I've said before, I mean, after I wrote Adios America, we are so close, Lars Larson. And if that happens, there's no point to what you do. There's no point to what I do. It's just going to be lost. You're going to look at these districts and states and think, wow, I thought we had that one. I wonder what happened. So, yeah, he really has to keep his promises. But the midterm was surprisingly successful. I think, as indicated in my column, entirely because of the Kavanaugh hearings. What have the Republicans done to gin up our base?
Nothing.
So their base is white hot. The Republicans have done nothing, and they have the audacity to just rub salt into the wound by bragging about the tax cut. Half of America doesn't pay taxes, Republicans. Would you move off the tax cuts? They just make the Democrats vote on a wall. Make them vote on sanctuary cities. Make them vote on anchor babies. I promise you, if we could have, a plebiscite, have individual Americans vote on that, a proposition on those three issues, walls, sanctuary cities, anchor babies, we would win by 90%. Just get the Democrats to oppose wildly popular positions. They didn't do any of that. So you sit back and realize, fantastic, Mitch McConnell's plan for victory was, let's hope a Supreme Court justice retires and the Democrats accuse our nominee of gang rape. Let's just keep our fingers crossed and hope that happens. I mean, the Kavanaugh hearings and thus the midterm elections, it is an example of what I write about in Resistance is Futile, everything I've just said to you. Lots of people are prepared to be outraged and appalled by Donald Trump. But every time you want to attack him for not building the wall or doing anything else he promised, they come out with some outrageous attack on him, and you're right back in his camp. If they just calmly said, no, I actually will build a wall. I think we should protect our fellow Americans. And, whatever socialist things they want to attach to that, They can beat them, but they can't.
Unfortunately. Ann, thank you very much. I thought maybe the president was, and that's Ann Coulter, the author most recently of Resistance is Futile.